Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Life Transformation Radio. This show is all about life transformations and our journey from where we were to why we are doing what we are doing today. We will discuss the hiccups, the roller coasters, and the blood, sweat, and tears that has been poured out while discovering our purpose. It is all about our transformations. Here is your host, Sean Douglas.
Welcome to another episode of Life Transformation Radio. We are live here, and our guest today is the USO North Carolina President, John Falkenbury. Are you there, sir?
I am here, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience. We were working through some weird technical difficulties. Kept kicking me out every time I logged in, but we're here, and I am so pumped to have you on the show. I'm very honored for you to be here.
Well, I'm sorry to be on a cell phone, but whatever reason, Skype just wasn't acting right today, so we're on cell.
Seriously, because I go into Skype, and man, like every time I connect it, boom, kick me out. Every time I connect, kick me out. I reset, kick me out. Like it just wasn't. Skype was being ridiculous. So yeah, if you're ready, I am pumped to be here.
Well, go for it.
Sure. So, I am your host, Master Resilience Trainer, inspirational speaker, and author, Sean Douglas. Welcome to all of our listeners who are listening from wherever you are. This show is heard in 23 countries, so thank you to those who are listening from around the world. Life Transformation Radio is all about our transformations. We tell the stories here of why we are doing what we're doing and to help transform others. Listen to us every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, and on the first and third Fridays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. On the show are impactful and amazing guests that are impacting everyone around them. So if you have a question for the guest or a question for myself, this is a live show, and you can call in at 657-383-1109. Again, the number is 657-383-1109. And today, my guest is no different. He is doing impactful things with the amazing team that is around him that is the USO. So let's learn more about the USO and what they do. So Mr. John Falkenbury was appointed as the president and CEO for USO of North Carolina in March 2009. He is responsible for planning, organizing, and directing the operations of the state headquarters, 6 USO fixed centers, 3 satellite centers, and a mobile center in the areas in and surrounding Jacksonville, Charlotte, Fayetteville, and Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. These base and airport centers provide a full range of services, including critical resiliency, transition assistance, financial literacy, and children's educational programs, travel assistance at Charlotte Douglas International, Raleigh-Durham, Fayetteville, and Ellis Airports, deployment and homecoming operations, internet and video link access, military and civilian community outreach programs, fallen and wounded warrior escort services, holiday feasts, and extensive morale-boosting activities. Whew, you guys do a lot. Good Lord. With over 35 years of experience in demanding corporate and military environments, John has successfully created business growth and operational successes through sound business management, organized strategic communications and marketing, and motivational leadership. Mr. Falkenbury has served over 20 years in the U.S. Army with command and staff assignments throughout the United States and in Germany, including Chief of Operations and Director of Public Affairs, 56th Field Artillery Command, Germany, Battalion Executive Officer, 2nd Armored Division in Fort Hood, Texas, Office of Army Chief of Public Affairs at the Pentagon, and Director of Public Affairs at the U.S. Army War College and Carlisle Barracks at Carlisle Barracks, Pennsylvania. Upon leaving active duty service, he returned home to North Carolina and became the president and CEO of Five Oaks Nursing Center in Concord, managing partner of the Falkenbury Family LLC, and president of the Stephen D. Falkenbury Jr. Foundation in Charlotte. And he established and operated the first North Carolina division of Fleishman-Hillard International Communications. Man, dude, you are just crushing everything you do.
You can stop reading anytime.
I didn't even include the whole thing. Man,
go ahead.
but
I'll let you finish. You're on a roll.
No, Man, I tell you what, I've been to the airport, with the USO. Dude, it is amazing, especially, on the way back when you're waiting for a layover or something, or you're trying to fly out somewhere. Man, what a nice place the USO and the airport is, man. It is truly an exceptional place to go.
Well, you're right. We're very proud of our legacy with the National USO. We're the USO in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
We are the oldest continuously operating USO in the world because of our Jacksonville Camp Lejeune Center. It has never shut its doors since it opened in late 1941, early 1942. Even though the USO technically closed down at the end of World War II, that center remained open under the USO umbrella. And then when USO came back to life with the Korean conflict, we continued to operate. So we are still in the same World War II building over there in Jacksonville, North Carolina. It's a historic landmark. But, we're part of a bigger family. We're a 75-year-old national military organization that has one mission, and we've done it so well for 75 years. That is to connect our servicemen and women with their family, with their home, with their country throughout their entire career. So when you talk about the USO as an organization, we're part of over 200 USO locations globally. Now, the National USO, who gives us our charter to operate, we're not funded by the National USO, so we have to feed ourselves. But that's okay because we work hand in hand with the national team. National primary focus is overseas, Europe, Southwest Asia, and the Sandbox, the Pacific theaters of operation. And then here in the United States, the vast majority of USO operations are, like ourselves here in North Carolina, chartered centers. So, but we work hand in hand. Like our transition program called Pathfinder program, that's a national program, a concierge service to allow the USO family to help our service members and their families transition to a new life, whether it's to a new duty station or out into the new world after they're leaving military service. So we're very proud of what we do.
Yeah, and like I said, I've used them. I've seen them everywhere. They do an amazing job supporting the mission, and I can't thank you guys enough for everything that you guys do, sponsoring different programs, and you have your own programs here in North Carolina. I've been to a Warrior Reset before, and it is amazing.
Well, I appreciate that, Sean. We have to dispel one myth for your listeners. The USO, I'm a veteran, you're a veteran, and thank you for your service. I know you were born from the Army, but you spent time in the Air Force. But the Air Force was, born from the Army.
Oh boy!
But we're not a veterans organization.
Right.
We honor the veterans. We thank them for their service. Sometimes they'll come into our centers and think that we're a veterans lounge, but we're not. We're USO. We're chartered by Congress. So Congress, over the 75 years, has said, hey, your mission is to serve those currently serving in their families. So, but if a veteran comes in and is a little confused, I tell our volunteers, who are the core of what we do at all our airport centers and the base centers, is, hey, show a little common sense, show a little compassion, explain the situation to them, and 9 times out of 10, that veteran understands, and he's going to help us out somewhere down the line. But we're very proud of that, what we do. But you mentioned our resiliency program, Sean. I mean, that's something that we were at the leading edge because we've been at war for 14-plus years. Most Americans may not realize that we have been at war the longest time in our nation's history. And our fellow service members, on average, have maybe deployed 7, 8, 12 times if you're a special operations force. So the impact that makes on the family, on the service member, to adjust, to readjust, to get back to a new normal, it requires a lot of attention and it requires a lot of help because, as you know, a service member is probably not going to go self-identify as needing help within the military chain of command because it may affect their career. So how do we help them? Well, get them out of that environment. Get them into an environment that they have peer-to-peer relationship with 75 other service members of all branches. and we talk to them. You saw it. We have the resiliency with
Mm-hmm.
nutrition and psychologists and yoga and nutrition and bonding activities. And 9 times out of 10, when we have something like that, we are able to help that service member. So we're at the leading edge of that, and we're very proud of that. But we are working hand in hand with our national colleagues as well.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So the first question that I dive into and always ask on the show to every single guest, and I think it's really the most important question that you could ever ask yourself, is why? Why wake up and why be the president of the North Carolina chapter of USO? Why do everything that you've done with the foundation and setting up the programs and serving? And what is your why? What do you wake up to every day?
Why? Because I retired in 99, and in about 4 years later, we're at war, and I had colleagues at war. I've lost people that I had served with. I commissioned. There's a Camp Buehring over in Kuwait. Camp Buehring is named after Lieutenant Colonel Chad Buehring. He's a Citadel graduate. I'm a graduate of the Citadel. I was there when he was commissioned. So the impact that it had on me, and I'm now retired in the corporate world, saying, what can I do? So I started slowly in the Charlotte market. I became an unpaid. I was not going to take pay to tell the soldiers and service members stories, because less than 1% of our nation serving, somebody's got to be a spokesperson. So I had radio stations and TV stations that I was able to connect with my colleagues still serving and bring up-to-date information and just tell the service member's story, and that was a passion for me. In 2009, and I was in the corporate world. I mean, I ran the family business. It was a nursing home, very enjoyable. Culture shock, leaving the military, which is a very youthful environment, and a very male-oriented environment, going into a senior living, which is an older population and very women, because the nursing and the clinical staff dominated. So I was learning a lot going into that environment, but it was a family business, and my dad was ill, and they needed somebody to come in and manage it. And I said, it's my turn to help the family, and I did that. We righted the ship, and we were able to sell the facility for a lot of reasons. It wasn't because I didn't have the passion for it. It's just very hard in this environment, very litigious environment, as everybody knows, to, as an independent owner, to sustain the high level of operations. And I wasn't going to ruin our reputation simply because it was a money issue. So I had to make a very tough decision. But in the interim period after that, I did the corporate world. I got a nice salary, and I said, it's not about the salary. And in 2009, a very good friend of mine, he was a Vietnam POW, Colonel Quincy Collins, said, John, the USO in North Carolina is seeking a new president. Would you consider doing that? And I said, you know what? I need to get back into the fight. I need to be back around troops and their families. And so I went in there, and my wife said, I've never seen anybody do what you've done, where you did a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I said, well, you do your research and you set up a vision on where you want to go. And next thing I know, I'm hired. And as I tell people, I have the best job in the world because I'm around service members and their families, and I'm helping them. And I don't have to put up with all the baloney that the current serving leaders have to put up with. I mean, it's a challenge when you consider they're fighting a war, yet you have to worry about the political situation in the United States or the zero defect mentality. All we got to do is provide resources to care for men and women in uniform. And I can't think of a better job. And more importantly, I got 29 fellow teammates that are part of the paid staff, and over 800 volunteers. And you know what? They're godsend. I just love them to death. They give their heart and soul. We don't do it for the pay, but they do it day in, day out. So you ask why I did it? Because I wanted to give back to our military and their families. That's the environment I spent 20 years in, and I owe them a debt of gratitude and a debt of help.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So looking back, can you pinpoint exactly what your transformation was, going from what you were doing and then coming in 2009 and becoming the chapter president, and has there been a transformation of that organization over the years?
Well, personally, the transformation that I have was not a 1 or 2 year transformation. It was a 20-year transformation from the time that I came in the Army as a young second lieutenant and learned very quickly that I find the right non-commissioned officer and I listen to them, and the right senior officers, and find role models that you can epitomize. I'm still in contact. When I was a battery commander in the 8th Infantry Division in Germany, my first sergeant was First Sergeant Doyle Waters. To this day, he and I still stay in touch. To this day, even though he retired as a command sergeant major, he's first sergeant and I'm BC, battery commander, when we talk. He taught me a lot. When I was teaching ROTC, I had First Sergeant John Sweeney, and I broke my heart when I found out that he passed away last year. And just he was another role model as an NCO that I was able to look at detailed planning, how you really communicate to people and to motivate them. And then from the officer side, I was very fortunate in the 8th ID that was a division that the stars shone on. General Dennis Reimer, who went on he was the Vardy commander, division artillery commander as a colonel. He went on to be the Army Chief of Staff of the Army. And he's somebody that is quietly not known. And I model how I try to do business with my staff after how he used to do staff meetings and listen to people and try to communicate. And so you look at these people and you grow over time to the point when at the end of my career, I was at the Army War College. I had gotten out of field artillery and was doing public affairs. And I had, at that time, Major General Bob Scales, who was a warrior scholar who understood the art of communication and allowed me to grow into that thing so that we could continue to position the Army War College as thinkers in strategic thinking and the impact that it has on the military. So when I left, and then I get out of the military and I go into a corporate world that I'm not familiar with. So what did I do? I educated myself. I became a licensed nursing home administrator, and I keep that license current because it's a challenge. You have to get federally licensed, state licensed, and I keep it current. And so that transformation process doesn't happen overnight. It's a process that takes time and years and learning and falling down and picking up and doing something else, so that by the time I was able to become the president of the USO in North Carolina, I felt I was at that mature state that I could mentor those people working with me. I could be on equal par with some of the senior leaders that were out there that I had to deal with. So, going into the USO in North Carolina, I felt that I was really positioned to be that senior leader. Now, you talk about the transformation of the USO of North Carolina. I'm very proud of what this organization has done. When I came on board, hats off to my predecessor. She's a retired gunnery sergeant. In 2003, there was only one center in North Carolina. We now operate 10 locations. When I came on board, we had 4 locations in 2009. But she set up the system for me to grab hold of something. It's metastasizing and becoming a great organization. How do we take it to the next level? And so in 2009, we had 4 centers and served about 250,000 people. Right now, as you said, we operate 10 locations, and we provided just shy of 600,000 programs and services for our military here. That may be you visit the airport, and that's a service, or you go to a resiliency program, and that's a service. So 600,000 touches in the past year, and not just what we're doing in an airport lounge or we're doing at a homecoming and deployment, but we've transformed to meet the needs of the military. We listened to them, that commander or senior enlisted, and we said, what keeps you up at night? And they told us, they said, the resiliency, the wellness of the force. If they're getting out, how do they transition? how do they deal with money situations? Because you're coming back with a pocket full of combat pay, and you go on a spending spree, and now you're a private E3, and 6 months later you're in debt. So how do you manage that? Because at the end of the day, all of that affects the operational readiness of the force. And so while there are great programs within the military, there are gaps. And so our role, both at the National USO and the USO in North Carolina, is to help fill those gaps. But to fill those gaps, we need corporate support. We need corporations to understand that you have an obligation to these men and women, that less than 1% that are taking care of your freedoms. They're in 180 countries around the globe. They're just not in Afghanistan or Iraq. 180 countries around the globe. And we need your help to take care of them. So we rely on corporate partners. Harris Teeter here in North Carolina grocery store, phenomenal partner. Just did a campaign.
Really?
Over $500,000 in 1 month. Yeah, it was amazing. Their customers and their associates gave $1, $3, $5 to help the USO nationally, because Harris Teeter is up and down the East Coast. So they raised over $1 million in 1 month. $500,000 of it stays right here in North Carolina. And guess what? That allows us to provide those critical resiliency programs. Bank of America funds our mobile unit so that we can take it where we don't have a fixed center, or take it out to an emergency response when Hurricane Matthew hit. Myself and some of my team went out for over a week and deployed the mobile unit so that we had a center with Wi-Fi and television and cooking and free drinks and bug spray. Wow. And Walmart and Harris Teeter opened their doors up and say, take what you need. We know it's an emergency. So corporate partnerships and individual donors are the lifeblood of what we do. Man, I've talked a little bit. I need to give you some time.
No, I am blown away. Like I guess I don't want to say as a user of the program, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, as a active duty service member, we do. There's a couple people here where I'm at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base that have worked intimately with the USO, here in different events and stuff. And it's just a pleasure to work with a team that comes in and see from the outside looking in, like what you guys do, but then also have the opportunity to say, hey, I need some help or whatever. And it's just like, here, let's do it. It's awesome.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, Seymour Johnson's a great little base. You just had the air show. It's a phenomenal air show. We were out there for that. And one of our best volunteers is out there, a guy named Al Peterson. Phenomenal volunteer. Yeah, phenomenal. And, and it took a while for them at Seymour to see the impact our resiliency programs were.
I know.
But we had seen the suicides increasing. North Carolina Guard led the nation in suicides. I remember about a year ago there was a young lieutenant out of Seymour Johnson that committed suicide while deployed. We've got to address those issues. And that's what drives, that's what motivates us. But in order to do that, we've got to have funds to do it. But those people giving us the funds need to know that we're good stewards of that money. And so what we're very proud of is that 93 cents of every dollar goes back to a program of service. So we're top rated in Charity Navigator. We're top rated in GuideStar. We're a Better Business Bureau affiliated organization, because we want to make sure we're transparent, and we want to make sure that people know that if you're giving money to us, we're doing what we should be doing with it, and you can rest assured it's going to a program of service, not to coffers.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I got a two-part question that I always ask. So what has been the best part about your journey so far?
The journey within the USO. I mean, life
within
is
the USO.
About chapters. Yep. Well, and I somebody tells me they're leaving and they're upset, and I said, don't be upset. You're going to another chapter in your life, and that's how you have to look at it. It's not, we all grow. Granted, my first chapter of my life lasted 20 years, and then the next chapter between the nursing home and then Fleishman-Hillard and then, teaching a little bit at UNCC, all those were effective. So, that transformation and going into the USO in North Carolina, how did it affect me personally? I wake up every morning glad I'm going to work. I wake up every morning knowing that I've got a team of dedicated professionals, both paid staff and volunteers, who I know that they'll make mistakes, but you know what? They're doing it for all the right reasons. And the other day, somebody came to me and said, John, I know you're out here, traveling, 3 or 4 days a week around the state. And I said, Bubba, number one, nobody's shooting at me like the guys in Iraq or Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I get to come home or go to a hotel on a nice clean bed. And I eat a nice meal. I'm not eating some funky MRE or, God forbid, a tea ration, out there. And I get to see my family. So, you know what? Don't complain. Well, somebody else has it much worse than you do. So
absolutely.
That's how I look at it.
So on the second
what's
part
the
of
second
that,
part of your question?
What has been the worst part about the journey so far?
I think the worst part is it's not a bad part, but it's an upsetting part is that there are some people who don't understand our transformation in this state. They still seem to think it's some little old center, out of Jacksonville, North Carolina, and you've got to deal with that because you've got to educate, you've got to inform them. And then you've got to educate. It's a constant education process because we are a very well-known brand, the USO. People see it, oh, yeah, I know that brand, but they don't know what it means. Or they think that we're a government agency, or they think that we're part of the national USO, and we have to educate them, and it's constantly because my mother did it to me. I just taken over here and said, I wrote a check to the USO. And I said, you sent it to Arlington? And she said, yeah. I said, that helped our troops overseas. Keep doing that, but we don't get any of that money, so you got to help us too. So you've got to educate people, and that's the thing that is it's tiring sometimes. You've got to pick yourself up and keep going. But the worst time that I think that I've had in here was one for all the right reasons. It was in 2012. We were asked to step out of our comfort zone a little bit and do a major Vietnam veteran homecoming. One of the senators asked us to do that, and we did it. We pulled it together. We did it at Charlotte Motor Speedway. We had over 70,000 military and Vietnam veterans come there. It was broadcast across the state. We had Charlie Daniels. We had George Clinton. We had the Oak Ridge Boys. We had the Golden Knights. We had Seymour Johnson flying over. We had Marines there. We had 100 nonprofits that were there to help Vietnam veterans or any veterans with anything. And we were teaming up with some of the motorcycle groups, and everything went great. An hour after it ended, we're packing up and moving, and there was an accident on the track. A couple motorcyclists apparently were not where they're supposed to be, and we had 2 killed on that day.
Man.
That was such a downer. And then, you have to deal with that, all the legalities of it and everything else. I mean, it all worked out because people understood that, we were doing the right thing. But that was probably the worst event from an organization. But in all honesty, the worst thing that happens is when our honor support team, those teams at our airports, all volunteers, have to do a dignified return for a fallen warrior. Where before this conflict, our fallen were coming home like baggage. And our Vietnam vets said, we're not going to stand up for this anymore. And so they formed our honor support team, and we have the family support team. And if there is a fallen warrior that comes back, we are coordinating, those volunteers are coordinating with the casualty office, with the airline, with TSA, with the family to ensure that when that plane arrives, that the remains come off and are done in a dignified, respectful, honorable way. But when you see that, and I'm okay when I'm on the tarmac until, even when the coffin comes down and it's flag draped, and until the spouse or the loved one goes up and puts his or her hand on that coffin, it's not driven home. But you see that, and that's
right.
the cost of conflict. And it's not just combat. We lose men and women in peacetime just like we do in wartime. Most recently, last week, we lost 7 Marine Special Operations service members out of Camp Lejeune. And our honor support team was standing by. Our center in Jacksonville was standing by. We're helping them. If they go to Dover, if the remains are at Dover, the whole USO network activates. And we know when that family's coming through the airport. And we have volunteers there to escort that family to their flight so that they don't have to worry about that. So those are the worst times of what we have going on. That's a long-winded answer. I apologize.
No, I enjoy it. I mean, I'm just I had no idea how in-depth you guys go. You know, because when we deploy, we see, you know, the USOs out there giving us the pocket American flags and maybe some water and stuff, like, hey, you know, high fives as we get on the plane, or the opposite where we get off the plane and they're handing us water and high fives, and you know what I mean? Or you know, you like, we only get to see a glimpse of the things that you guys do all over the state of North Carolina. You know, because I think North Carolina has Army, Marines, Air Force, and Navy. I believe there's Navy because there's Camp Lejeune, and you know, but you know, you've got basically all 4 branches represented here, even some Coast Guard.
No,
I'm
you
sure.
actually not. Yeah, you do. You got. This is the 3rd or 4th largest state with a presence of military. You got national. Don't forget your National Guard. You got National Guard in 90 of our 100 counties. You know, one of the brigades just got back from a peacekeeping mission in Kosovo, and we were helping them. We got the Coasties at Elizabeth City down to Wilmington, you know, and then we got reserve units. The 108th Training Command here in Charlotte is, you know, training or mobile training teams going overseas. So you're right. When we're everywhere, we got to be. Somebody's got to take care of these men and women, and you're right. Most people don't know the extent to what we deliver services and how effective we are at doing that. Sure. So I'm very grateful that you gave us the opportunity, you know, to get on here to talk about what we do. And if one person's listening and they want to help us out, that's one person more than we had an hour ago.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So, which takes me, that's a good segue into the next question. So who has been the biggest influencer for you guys as an organization? Who's been the biggest influencer?
You know, that's a great question. And because I think that there are influencers, there are 2 different ways you can approach who's influencing us. The service members themselves are influencers. We have to listen to them, and we have to know what they and their families need. And that will influence what programs and services that we have. I think as an organization, I'm very fortunate that I've had 3 chairmen and a phenomenal board of directors who, as we say it, they have their noses in, but their fingers out. In other words, they are monitoring, they're making sure we're doing the right thing, but they don't get involved in the day-to-day operations. And to us as the deliverers, that's great to know that they've got our back. And then the other influencers are some of these organizations who are perennial partners of ours. You know, I mentioned Harris Teeter and Bank of America, Lenovo Computers. Well, they found out when I came on board that, you know, we didn't have a server, we didn't have customer service software, we didn't have standardized computers, and they equipped us across the board with all Lenovo equipment. They didn't tout that. You know, but that's, you know, about $75,000 worth of automation that they gave to us. I mentioned Bank of America, Community Coffee, a great coffee company out of Louisiana, who they could just keep selling their coffee and then, you know, doubling it to the people overseas, but they wanted to help servicemen and women in a state that had a large presence. So they're a huge sponsor of ours and are providing not just dollars, but they give us coffee to give to the troops. You know, if we Seymour Johnson at the air show, they brought out their trolley and were giving out iced coffee, you know, at no cost. you look at these, and then, you know, the Carolina. I'm a big Panthers fan. I love the NFL. My wife's a Bills fan. God love her. But I'm a Carolina Panthers fan. Dyed in blue, and you know, from Coach Rivera, who served in the military. Who learned one time, I called him about a need for a fallen warrior, and Coach didn't even miss a beat, says, how much you need, and he stroked a check. You know,
wow.
We've got Graham Gano, Ryan Khalil, Mario Addison, all ambassadors on their own time. If I call them and say I need some help, if they're available, they'll come help us. But the Panthers themselves, they have us take service members to training camp. They come out and they say, fill these seats at the game. We got six seats called the Row of Honor. You know, anything that has to do with the military, we're working with the Panthers. We took 5 Carolina Panthers and 2 Top Cats over to Germany in March so that they could lift the spirits. Yeah, so you talk about the influencers. There's so many of them, you know, and I'm at the hub of that, so I get to see all those influencers.
That's so cool. Wow,
it is. It's a cool job.
So let's talk about where you guys are headed now. What kind of new adventures? You know, what kind of programs? What kind of things? Can you talk about the future of the North Carolina chapter of USO?
Well, absolutely, we can. In fact, we just finished with the board the next 3-year strategic plan.
Wow.
There are 2 critical areas that we're heavily involved in now, and we'll make the formal announcement on the USO Pathfinder service, which is, I talked about it earlier, it's a formal concierge transition assistance program headquartered at Fort Bragg for now. We'll extend it to Camp Lejeune in the future, and we're interconnected with our other USO centers around the states, so that we can make sure that we're transitioning all these servicemen and women as they come in and out of the military. On top of that, here in North Carolina, we're part of the NC Serve network. NC Serve is something that we've been involved with for about a year, and we're going to grow it, continue to grow it. But we manage that network in the Raleigh-Durham, Fayetteville, a little bit over in the Alamance County in Greensboro, that brings together all those community organizations that provide legal assistance or housing or jobs, mainly nonprofits, and orchestrating so that if John Falkenbury is moving and I need help with a job, I say, I need help, I call the call center, and we put them in touch with the right person, and we track them until they have a successful outcome. And if during that process we find out that they have a transportation need, then we'll get them to the right transportation provider, and we'll track them till they have a successful outcome. And it's part of a national organization called America Serves. So those are 2 critical areas that we're heavily involved in. And then, you know, as we look at our resiliency programs, we morph them to meet the needs. And we're going to really start getting into the entrepreneurial area, bringing in experts in entrepreneurialism and to help in their transition. So on top of, hey, we still got to maintain 4 airport lounges. We still got to operate the homecomings and deployments at Fort Bragg, Camp Lejeune, right, Seymour Johnson, and wherever else we're there. And on top of all that, we're going to do all these programs as well.
Awesome. That's, man, again, you guys are just absolutely crushing it. Like, you are so involved. I had no idea. It's more than just, hey, let's hand out some water bottles and take some people here and where. I mean, you guys are 3-year plan. That's crazy. Most people don't even plan a year out. You guys are planning 3 years out. That is amazing.
Yeah, and if you go into our centers, you'll see our plan. We've made it very simple. It's a circle, and it's got
perfect.
You, the military, in the middle, and then it's got all our area. We have 4 main areas in North Carolina: Piedmont, Triangle, Sandhills, and Coastal, and each one of them have, you know, what they're going to do, and the board knows what they want to do. we're not an endowed organization because while we're the oldest, we're also in many ways the youngest. Because remember, in 2003, it was just the one center. So while we are good with funds on a year-to-year basis and have to continue that, if there is a really sharp decline in public support, how are you going to overcome those rainy days? And many of my colleagues elsewhere have endowments. And so the board is in the process of evaluating how do we launch an endowment campaign and get it to where, the funds needed to do the operations, just bare bone operations are there without having to worry about, any operations during the fundraising activities during the year. So they're embarked on that. That's something that will take place over the next year and extend over the next 3 to 5 years. So endowment planning is critical in any nonprofit organization. So,
awesome.
And it's a very competitive landscape. When I tell people, they say, well, I give to Hounds for Heroes. I don't know if they're a real organization or not, Sean, but, and I say, please do. If that's where your heart is, please do that. But in North Carolina alone, since the outset of the current conflict, it's gone from about 30 nonprofits serving the military and the veterans, like American Red Cross and USO of North Carolina, to there are over 1,300 nonprofits in North Carolina alone who say they serve the military or veteran population. Some will stay the long run, like the USO of North Carolina, and some will fall through the wayside because they can't sustain themselves. So it's a very competitive landmark. So that's why, when people ask me, I say, you got to do your homework. You got to look at their tax return. Is it online? Have they done an audit? So, yes, you have a heart for giving, but use your brain in making that decision.
Perfect. So, speaking of that type of stuff, what do you think was the best resource that you guys have found during your journey?
Honestly, it's the USO network. While we're not funded by the national USO, it's invisible to the normal person. But they have a lot of resources that we can use to our benefit. It may be a program that we are not able to fund or support, don't have the ongoing demand for it, like a caregivers conference. We may be able to do a caregivers conference, but the National USO will bring a caregivers conference here and we'll supplement it. Or a USO to go, where if we've got a deploying unit that is going to an austere location, we just had a Marine Expeditionary Force launch that was going where there wasn't a USO. I called the National USO and they packaged up a USO. It's a big container. It's almost like a Connex that goes and is given. It's given to that unit. It's theirs. They keep it, and that's it. And then my colleagues in other chartered locations, we have a phenomenal relationship. We're always cross-fertilizing and sharing information and best practices. We meet once or twice a year. So those are resources that I'm very glad that we have at our disposal.
That's awesome. Wow, that's incredible. You get to keep that Connex with them and supplies and all that. That is, wow. I'm completely impressed. As I asked the question, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I literally had no idea. I feel bad almost because I had no idea.
Well, most people don't, and most people can't differentiate between the National USO to USO in North Carolina. That's all right. I tell people, if you're going to write a $100 check, send 50 of it to the national because I got troops overseas using national assets. Keep 50 locally to help the local operations. But again, most people don't see. I mean, we as an organization have got to do a better job communicating what we do, so that we can educate and properly inform the American people who may or may not be involved with the military. Again, remember I said 1% is serving. So unless you're a family member that has a service member, you're going about your day in, day out job, not like World War II where we had rationing and we had 11% of our nation under arms, so you were affected by it. you're going on. You're getting up every morning. You're watching TV, drinking your Starbucks, and there's some soldier or sailor, airman, Marine, coastie out there, in God knows where. I mean, somewhere in Africa, somewhere in Malaysia. Guess what? There's a USO out there. They actually contract for tents, so we can set up remote USO locations. So that's why we have our mobile unit. So, yeah, it's a phenomenal organization, and I'm so proud of the USO as an organization. But as you can tell, very proud of the USO in North Carolina.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like it, definitely. So as we close the show, this is my most favorite part. It's the shameless plug. You can plug a friend, quotes, websites, Facebook products, whatever it is that you want to plug. This is your moment. I'm even shining all episode, but this is the time to shine, right? So this is your moment. Shameless plug. Go.
Shameless plug. Go to USO-NC.org and look how you can help. It's not always about treasure. It's about time and talent. But USO-NC.org. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram. But do me a favor. Follow us. Learn what the USO of North Carolina and our USO colleagues around the world are doing. It will blow your socks off. But, the other shameless plug is I'm just so thankful of the staff and the volunteers that I have. In the 8th Infantry Division in World War II, when the Germans were surrendering, the German general asked the American 8th ID commander, "Where are your credentials? What gives you the right to take my surrender?" And the general, dirty and funky like all combat guys are, turned around to his even grungier servicemen, the soldiers behind him, and said, "These are my credentials." And our credentials in the USO in North Carolina are those volunteers and those staff members who day in, day out, get up and are there at dark 30, are there plainside taking care of dignified returns, are there giving a hug or a kiss as they're going away. So when you got shameless plug, hey, America, wake up. The USO as an organization has been by the side of these servicemen and women for 75 years. You show me one organization other than maybe the Red Cross that's been that dedicated to our men and women in uniform. So USO-NC.org.
Perfect. Man, I love it. And so if somebody wants to donate, you can donate right on that site, right? You just click the donate button and you should be able to donate right there.
You can do that, or our mailing address is there, and you can send a check in. The only time we ever ask servicemen and women to consider it is during the Combined Federal Campaign. We have a Combined Federal Campaign number, and it's on the website. And if every service member in North Carolina were to give just $1, not $1 a month, just $1, that's nearly $500,000 when you consider how many servicemen and women and military retirees we have in this state. You don't think you can make a difference that $1 can make? So, again, I tell people it's not about the size of the donation. It's knowing that it's going to good use. And I tell you make a donation to the USO in North Carolina, you'll get a thank you letter personally signed by me. I don't auto-pin anything. I look at all the thank you letters, and if you're $250 or more, we have to report it to the IRS. You're going to get a thank you letter. And you may even get a phone call from me. I get people, little old ladies, give me $1,000, and I call them because it's that important. So, yeah, it's amazing. It's important.
And I really want to thank you for everything that you and your team is doing, from a service member standpoint and, from other members. I see just here in Goldsboro and at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base with Al Peterson and everything that they're doing. And, I cannot thank you enough for everything that you guys are doing. And thank you so much for, giving up your time to come on the show and just, give us a brief synopsis of really the in-depth reach that the USO of North Carolina has, in the state.
Well, Sean, I appreciate you giving us the venue. I'd love to, if you get feedback from the show, please let my team know and myself know, and what we can do better. That's what we're always looking to do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely, I will. And Life Transformation Radio listeners, if you guys want to donate to the USO of North Carolina, please, I'm asking, please come on. USO-North Carolina NC. Dude, you got to check it out. They're an amazing organization. Go on the website, click the button, donate it, and help some service members with everything that we need, and help the USO further their mission and helping us transform into better people. John, again, thank you so much for your time and coming on the show, and I've loved learning about the USO of North Carolina.
Well, Sean, thank you. Thank you for your service and your family's support to you, and I look forward to meeting you in person.
Oh, absolutely. We'll make it happen. We're going to make it happen.
Roger that.
Absolutely. Life Transformation Radio listeners, this has been another episode with impactful guests that are empowering and impacting everyone around them. If anything that you have heard here today has resonated with you, go on iTunes when it is uploaded in a couple of days. Go on Stitcher. Leave some Facebook comments. Get a hold of John Falkenbury at the USO of North Carolina. There's an incredible team ready at your disposal for whatever donations, whatever you want to do to support this incredible organization. Again, thank you so much for your support in the show. Join us every Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and on Fridays, the first and third Friday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We are a live show, so if anything resonates with you, you can call in, talk to the guest, talk to myself, and again, I appreciate your support. And as I always say, live your brand. Find opportunities every day to live out the values that you hold deep in your heart. Find opportunities every day to impact someone and be incredible to somebody. Whoever it is out there, lift them up, elevate them, and live your brand. Join us next time on Life Transformation Radio. Have a good night.